the NBC Sunday movie. Prepare for V, the most extraordinary miniseries ever made. A daring TV journalist struggling to uncover the startling truth behind the aliens' visit to Earth. And a beautiful and brave young scientist fighting for the very survival of the human race. Together, they take you on a fantastic journey to meet the Visitors. Prepare yourself for a television event that's out of this world. Prepare for V. Next.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to an all-new episode of the Chronic Rift Facebook Live podcast. It's your old pal, John S. Drew here, and today we're going to be celebrating I don't know if I can necessarily call it a phenomenon, but it was back in the day when it first premiered. We're going to be talking about the 35th anniversary of the original television miniseries, V. And joining me as part of this discussion here is our returning guest. He was with us a few weeks ago talking about his latest work, and in fact, he actually will tell us how some of his works were inspired by some of the moments there in V. Welcome back to the show, author Jeremy Brown. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Now, V premiered back in 1983, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was only meant to be a two-part miniseries the way Kenny kind of wanted it to be. I don't think he necessarily set it up that way. I mean, because we got the frustration of the, what was it? Why can't I think of the word? The ending. I'm sorry. I couldn't even think of that word for a second there. The ending where it's like the signal had been sent out. In this miniseries, if you're not familiar, basically Earth has been visited by a race of aliens that look and almost sound like us. And all they want to do is share their technology with us in exchange for some of the elements from our planet and such. But as we quickly discover, thanks to the investigative skills of journalist Mike Donovan, the aliens are really lizards in disguise, which, you know, on the surface, when you say that, it sounds ridiculous.
It does, but it worked so compelling, you know, so perfectly. That first moment when he makes that discovery, he's hiding in that air duct, and then he comes into the room, and I guess the guy's taking out his human eyes.
Right. And
you turn around and you see that there's lizard eyes. I remember being absolutely terrified and completely riveted in that moment. It was just so unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny because I remember all the lead up to it, and you know, they kept saying, you know, the visitors are coming. And that was it. They were very subtle about it. But the big thing that always scared me was as the V was etched across the screen.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I remember that very well. And you didn't even know what the title meant. You know, that made it. It's still, I think you don't know what it's referring to. You do ultimately when you see the show, but it was like, what is this? You know, some shows or movies have titles that deliver exactly what the story is. You kind of get it right away. Star Wars. You know, it's like, okay, I kind of understand what that's about. V, you don't know what it means. So you see these very chilling images. Because I remember those early trailers on TV on NBC, and they would just show the big spaceships flying over all the cities, and then it would just those letters would come in. Yeah, and it was like, what does this even mean? What is this? It was really compelling.
Right. And the thing was, too, is that, you know, like you say, we didn't know what the V, you know, because you instantly go for visitors, but there were those, including towards the end of the miniseries, it's V for victory.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think it sort of does have kind of a dual meaning that way. I remember, too, the viral marketing that was going on that I remember going into the city, you know, with my family. You know, I was a kid. I was 10 years old, and on the subways there were posters of the visitors. And they said the visitors are our friends, and they looked like promotional, like propaganda posters.
Yes.
Someone had painted a red V over the picture, like you see in the movie. And again, you didn't know what it was referring to or what it was about, but it got your attention.
No, absolutely. It definitely did get your attention there. And that's the scary part of it, is that the parallels with that movie and with certain historical events of the recent past. I mean, it was still only about 40 years earlier.
Right, absolutely. And what's funny is that the metaphors of that show, they don't hit you over the head with it. A lot of times, I mean, and the brilliance of it is, as a kid, I probably did not pick up on that metaphor, even though when you look at it now, the visitor's symbol is very swastika-like. And, the scientists, that they're targeting scientists and they're rounding up scientists, and scientists have to hide out. The metaphors and the parallels are there, and they're very strong. But as a kid, they kind of went over my head. I was just drawn into the story. It was an exciting story. And then when I was older, watching it again, then you see it a lot clearer. But I felt like it doesn't hammer you over the head with it.
No. No.
It could have.
It could have, exactly. Jeremy, just a moment here. I'm going to bring in our other guest, author Bobby Nash, who is standing by. So hang on just one second. But let me put this to you while we're talking here about that. There's also been some talk by some people that the show has some parallels to what's going on today. I don't know if I entirely agree with that. So, I mean, at least I'd like to be naive enough to think that. Let's put it that way.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, it was interesting you bring that up, because there was a scene when rewatching it where Martin talks about Martin, who's the visitor who's on the side of the humans. He's the fifth columnist defector who is working against the visitors to help the humans. He helps Donovan escape from the mothership. And Martin is talking to Donovan about how the leader, who's never named, he's the visitor's leader, is brought, has this plan for Earth, and what his nefarious plan is. And Donovan rather asks him, how did he come to power? And he talks about how, well, it was a lot of promises, very charismatic. He spoke to what the people wanted to hear, and that happens all the time on your planet, doesn't it? And watching it in 2018, I thought, gee, wow, that's really pretty obvious. Again, that's really pretty relevant to what's happening right now. So yeah, I think there's an element of that I think holds up.
I have him here on the line. Welcome to the podcast, author Bobby Nash.
Hi. Good morning.
Bobby, let me introduce you to Jeremy. Jeremy, two fellow authors here.
Nice to meet you, Jeremy.
How are you?
Wonderful. How about yourself?
Doing well, thanks.
So we're talking, Bobby, about the parallels from the past, and how there are those who are saying there are parallels in the current political situation.
Oh, with how with within the ranks of the visitors, or
within the ranks of the visitors and within the ranks of our own political systems here, and how certain people are able to, charismatically to a certain group of people, entice them to follow their way. I mean, you've got Daniel in the miniseries. I mean, he's not the brightest kid, but at heart he does have a good heart, but he's like so misguided that he follows along with what the visitors are doing, even after his parents are taken in the miniseries for their re-education.
Yeah, he wants to believe so bad that he's willing to accept anything they tell him, because he wants to believe that they're right. And yeah, you're right. A lot of it is the charisma, and what the visitors are selling Daniel is so enticing to him.
Right.
Especially he's a guy that wants respect, and he wants power, but he really wants people to just treat him with respect, and he doesn't feel he's getting that from his family, his friends, that these people are telling him everything he wants to hear. They're making him feel like he's welcome, like he's part of the family and part of their team. And for some people, that's, to use a fairly common euphemism, that's delicious Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and so I think the visitors, when they show up, I mean, they put their best face forward. These are really friendly looking people. They, before we learn the truth about them in the show, you could see how, man, you want these people to like you because they seem like they're just great people,
Right.
Right, yeah.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I think he's absolutely right. Just saying that it makes perfect sense about how the visitors, what they're selling is exactly what everybody wants to hear. So it's very easy that they can fall into that, everything that they've been promised. It's things are going so well. They're gonna cure our diseases. They're going to solve our environmental problems. They're going to make our planet better. What's a few scientists, in exchange for that?
Right. And another parallel with both the past and the present. I mean, we see Danny, and of course he's upset when his parents are taken away. But then you also have Donovan, our main character, the journalist who exposes the visitors. He's at odds with his mother.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who's very in the visitors.
It's very much, it's almost a political divide. If you're looking at modern days, like, how people on, conservatives and liberals today, there's sometimes in the same family are at violent odds with each other.
Right. Well, so violent that Donovan's mother shoots at him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
She also enjoyed the Kool-Aid.
she did. Well, she reaped the rewards. Her husband got business from the visitors, and she would, she got jewelry, if I remember correctly. Oh God, I can't remember Andrew Prine's name now. Steven, yeah, because he was sort of the contact with her there, and he'd given her the jewelry. And as you'd see, I don't want to get too much into it, but you go on into the series, she would eventually, spoilers, replace Christine as the spokesperson on television.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
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 But she was also looking out for number one a lot. I mean, when things start to turn against the visitors at the end, and it looks like the visitors are going to lose, she's quick to try to change sides again.
Right. Yeah. Which is, go ahead. I'm sorry.
She mentioned that in her speech to Donovan when she says, I had to get out of that small town in Tennessee or wherever it was, and I'm never going to look back. And I did whatever I had to do to get out of there. And so you get the sense that she is a survivor and that she will do whatever she has to do and align with whoever she has to align in order to keep herself going. And even because he's only mentioned briefly Donovan's actual father, who seemed to have some kind of – I seem to remember he had a drinking problem or he had some kind of an issue.
Right.
And so, again, it was, that obviously she had gotten rid of him and aligned herself with her new husband, who was a very successful owner of a plant that the visitors ended up using. And so obviously she's done whatever she has to do in order to survive.
That touches on, you say they're looking out for number one. And that's the current, I think, and honest to God, you see all these people who are like, we're patriots, we're doing what's best for this country and such. And I really do think in the end it's really looking out for themselves instead of looking out overall. And anybody who claims then to be looking out overall, like Mike, like Juliet, it's, no, you're the problem. You're what's wrong with this whole situation there. You just need to, let things progress the way they are.
Right. Absolutely. And even among the resistance, they begin looking out for themselves when, I can't remember, Robin's father is caught outside after curfew. He turns over the visitors, the resistance camp's location to the visitors because he has to protect his own daughter. So, again, it's sort of like everybody's doing whatever they have to do to survive.
Wow.
And then there's a lot of very human storytelling in that, where there's all this big stuff going on, but at the heart of it are these characters that are very human. And that are doing things like you said, to whatever they have to do to survive. But that's very much human nature, and I think they capture that pretty well with these characters.
It's something, too, to think about, though, also in that when we deal with this political divide we're currently in, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, and such, that in the end we look at it and try to understand that some of these people making choices that they make, whether we agree with them or not, and you can look at it as selfish, but being selfish is a human motivation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. I was talking with Jeremy just before the show about how the miniseries, when it came on, I think part of what made it so important in that particular time, because at that time, it was the start of the 80s. We were starting to come out of everything with the 70s and the recession and all, and everybody was feeling positive. We hadn't had the realization yet of what was going on in the world. And the television, though, at the time, our science fiction, I did a little quick look up. The year prior, we had Greatest American Hero, Mr. Merlin, Mork and Mindy, The Incredible Hulk was finishing up, and there was actually a live action, Herbie the Love Bug. The following year, 82, you had Voyagers, Tucker's Witch, Powers of Matthew Starr, Knight Rider started, Wizards and Warriors, and Greatest American Hero was finishing up. Now, we all love those shows to one extent or another. I have fond memories of many of them. I'm a big Greatest American Hero fan, Knight Rider, but they were never deep, thoughtful science fiction. The way we grew up with Star Trek, the way, certain other shows as well, Twilight Zone and such, that made you think. And then along comes V, and even the aliens themselves, because again, Jeremy and I were talking about it at the beginning there, we don't get the reveal for a while. We don't know. And there's the posters saying they're our friends, everything. I mean, of course we're looking for the twist, because that's going to be the drama. But when it hits, and then we see the way it divides everybody, it's not a simple, us versus them.
Right. And I think one of the smartest things they did, too, is they made, especially that first hour, or that first night of the miniseries, they make us like a lot of the visitors. They make the visitors interesting characters.
Right.
So that when we do get that reveal, we as the audience are even a little conflicted.
Very true.
And the fact that even though they're all these reptilians, they're not all evil.
No.
Because we do have some that even after their true motivations are revealed, we have characters who they're there because that's their job, They're not, like Willie. Is Willie, right? Willie is the one. Willie.
Wood's character, yeah.
Yes. Willie at no point, which is odd, very much against type for the actor.
Yes.
He's not evil at all.
Right.
He's just a guy doing his job. Mm-hmm. And, but we like that about him. And that also gives layers to the visitors. If all the visitors turned out to be, mustache twirling villains, it would be so easy to just go, okay, we hate them and let's kill them all. Mm-hmm. But they make it so that we like some of them. And so suddenly now we've got this, well, they're not all evil, just like all the humans, you've got the good ones and you've got some that are on the side of the not so good. And, so they're very layered. And I think that is a big part of the success, is because we care about these characters, whether we like them or not, we still care about them, which made the stakes higher.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's very layered throughout with on both sides, and that there are times that you understand both sides. And like you're saying about Willie, I mean, he's such a compelling character because, as Bobby was saying, he's just doing his job, and he's also not very good at it. When we first find him, he's lost. Whereas he says, "I am just," because he doesn't even know English very well, and he can't. And then when his superiors, he finally gets to where he's going, they dress him down, and they're like, obviously they don't think very highly of him, so that you feel you are immediately drawn to him, and you when it's revealed that what their plans are, you feel very conflicted about him and think, oh gosh, well, but I like this guy. I don't want him to be evil. So it's really pretty brilliant that way. And I think very different for science fiction of that time, at least in the 80s, where I think there were, like, if you look at like a Battlestar Galactica, the original show, there was, the humans and there was the Cylons. There was good and there was bad. And for a show like V that has much more shades of gray in there, I think was definitely very groundbreaking for that time.
Yeah, no, I would agree. You're absolutely right. I mean, all those shows I mentioned, you had your, for the most part, I mean, there were certain episodes maybe of certain shows where you might have the guy who's conflicted and stuff, but most of the time it was good versus bad. Everything was black and white. Everything was clear cut and dry. And, you could count on a resolution of a story being a certain way by the end. With this, as you went through it, with the exception of a few characters, because, again, it's survival, and we're all trying to survive. Martin, who leads the fifth column, he's willing to help, but to a certain extent. And then, at the same time, you've got someone like, and I can't remember her name now, there's a scene when Donovan is captured, and they're trying to help him escape. And so she comes in, and she does the strip down. Is that, or am I getting that mixed up with the final battle?
No, that's in V. Yeah, that's Barbara.
Yeah.
What was her name?
Barbara,
that's right. And he shoots her. She lets him shoot her in order to make it all look good.
Right. Yeah.
And Donovan's kind of he's very much the playing both sides, especially early on, because he's the face of, the guy that gets to shoot, the video of them. So he's kind of like pro-visitor.
Oh, sure.
At the beginning, but once he realized something's going on, the reporter in him, is like seeking out the truth. And I like that he is an unlikely hero. Mm-hmm. He's not the guy that, you would expect to be the guy that's going to stand up to him. That he's kind of an unlikely hero who does it because he has to. Once he figures out something's wrong, he can't just let it go. Right. Even though the characters like his mother, just trust them, do what they say, and
right. Or even his partner Christine, who is also part of the news crew, and even she says, I don't always. There's a moment where he confronts her about it, and she says, well, maybe I don't always agree with everything, but overall they're doing good. They're doing good things, and so she's a reporter. And she wants to still be blinded to the idea of what the visitors are all about. And so, yeah, I think it's, and I think, at first he's definitely kind of been suckered in and been drawn into their whole propaganda. But, yeah, I think you're right. Once he begins to uncover things and things begin to come to light, you can't let it go.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're all, to a certain extent, unlikely heroes. If you think about it, Juliet, she thought she was going to have her whole life ahead of her with her man, and then suddenly the whole thing of they turn against the scientists, so he turns sour, and she's forced into this sort of thing. Elijah was a dealer on the streets, that's all he was. Whatever he could hustle, and then suddenly he's a resistance fighter.
Mm-hmm. Right. And his story is interesting too, because his brother. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
But yeah, because his brother is the one who's very successful, and he's the doctor, and he's the sort of the golden child of the family, and yet in the end, it becomes Elias who is the one who sort of rises to the occasion. His hand is forced; he sort of has to. But at the end, finally, what he always had inside him is allowed to sort of come to light.
Yeah. Just like the Maxwells. They're just an ordinary family. They're not, they're just people living their lives and are thrown into this, or the Bernsteins who, especially the grandparents who they make they don't hide the allegation or the allegory to, the Jewish, the Nazis versus the Jews, and she's especially like the grandmother who's the one that shows them how to do the V for victory, and You know, so there's a lot of those where these people are not who you would expect to be the people running out. You know, it's not like when you see resistance or rebellions in other movies. It's these big heroes that are the ones that step up to save the day.
Right.
This is ordinary people who are like, you know, you can't have our world, and they're going to do whatever they can to save save the world, their world.
Right. Jeremy and I had been talking about this. There's like that one scene, and I want to play it here for a moment, of when the Maxwells are being hidden by the Bernsteins, specifically by the grandfather, and his son resists. He's like, you know, we can't do that. And he's like, if we don't, we've learned nothing from our past when you know, we faced a similar situation. So let me just play this clip here really quick.
Lynn and Stanley never use this place. It's just for storage.
God, it's gross. We can't live here. It's filthy.
We can clean it.
There's no way it's ever going to...
Robin. That's enough. It's fine, Abraham. Thank you. Forgive my daughter's
It's all right. I understand.
I'm not sure I do. Father, can I talk to you outside? I really don't believe you brought them here.
They have nowhere to go. Their house is being watched now.
And so is ours, by Daniel. Tell them that we're sorry.
Stanley, you don't understand. They have to stay. They need a place to hide.
And why is that?
Because the father is a scientist.
And therefore suspect. And a fugitive, I take it, which would make them doubly dangerous.
They have to stay.
And I'm telling you to get them out of here before
I won't.
Then I will.
No, you won't. We had to put you in a suitcase. In a suitcase. You were 8 months old. That's how we smuggled you out.
I know this
But
story, Father.
No, you don't. You don't. Your mother, Avshalom. Your mother didn't have a heart attack in the boxcar. She made it with me to the camp. I can still see her standing naked in the freezing cold. Her beautiful black hair was gone. They'd shaved her head. I can still see her waving to me as they marched her off with the others to the showers. The showers with no water. Perhaps if somebody had given us a place to hide. Don't you see, Stanley? They have to stay. Or else we haven't learned a thing.
It's amazing watching that scene now 35 years later and how it resonates with today, how it resonates with the past, but also just thinking about it, that how well Kenny Johnson, who wrote and directed and produced this, balanced out the drama, the interactions with the people, and still managed to, for the 10-year-olds who were watching it, keep that spirit of adventure and science fiction going through. And I'm not saying that because I don't want to make it sound like, you know, oh, science fiction stories don't have heart to them. I mean, granted, yeah, I did point out a bunch of science fiction TV shows that were pretty cut and dry, but it's just amazing because you watch that scene and for a moment you forget you're watching a miniseries about lizards in disguise as humans.
As you watch it again as an adult, there are layers that as a kid you might not have picked up on that are there. And I think that adds a level of staying power to that, yeah, because it's
Bobby, can you just... I'm sorry, Bobby, repeat that because you got a little garbled there.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
That there are layers to it that, as a child when I watched it, because I was a kid when I watched it the first time, and there are things that I enjoyed about it that I may not have understood as well. Mm-hmm. That when I watch it again as an adult, there's subtext there that I didn't pick up on when I was younger.
Right.
Because it's not that the V has changed, but I've changed. As I've gotten older, the world looks different to me now as it did to me at however old I was when it came out. So there's layers of subtext there that I think is one of those, hallmarks of a great movie is you can watch it at different ages and there's still something new for you each time that, like you said, and some of the more cut and dried things isn't there. Mm-hmm. And even though we did, the allegory for V was, dealing, obviously the World War II element is there, but I know it was a big thing about, because it's based on a book about fascism. And as a kid, I didn't know what fascism was. All I knew was that these lizard people are bad, and they're coming to steal our water and eat us. As an adult, I watch it and I, like we talked earlier, I see comparisons to the world we live in, and so there's a lot there that makes it for repeat viewings. I think that makes it continue to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's also part of the reason that the reboot series did not work as well, because they were just telling the top layer story. It didn't seem like they didn't have that underlying, this is the message we're giving.
Right. That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yeah, 100%. That John and I were talking about it earlier. That I think the reboot saw alien invasion. Aliens are bad. Let's fight the aliens, and that's our series. And it didn't go any deeper than that. And that's why it didn't work, and that's why it didn't connect with people.
Right. Now, Jeremy, we'd also talked about this prior to the show. Kenny Johnson, like I said, wrote, directed, produced this. Kenny had already a string of successes, having written for The $6 Million Man, created The Bionic Woman, developed The Incredible Hulk, made that more than what you would expect for the property and such. And then along comes V. Now, I can tell you that Kenny's had some influences on my writing, and Kenny himself has had influences. There's scenes from The Bionic Woman that were influenced by 2001. So, but you yourself, too, admit that V had an impact on you with the development of one of your books.
Oh, 100%. Yes, here, and I'll shameless self-promotion, Ocean of Storms. Available now. Written by myself and Chris Mari. And absolutely 100% influenced by V in the sense that particularly the early chapters sort of go to different people around the world who are leading their different lives, doing different things when they're all affected by this major global incident that kicks off the book. And then as the book progresses, they all come together and become our heroes. But when you first see them, they're all doing different things and kind of leading relatively ordinary workaday lives. And that was consciously, I can't speak for Chris's thought process when he was working on those sections.
Right.
But for me, consciously patterned after the opening of V, where you meet all the characters and you don't know that they're connected in any way. You don't know how they're going to become connected. Like when you see Elias for the first time, he's robbing someone's house, and you have no idea that he's Ben's brother, and that Ben is a successful doctor. And when Donovan and Tony are in El Salvador, and everyone's all over the world doing different things, they become our main cast. And that was so cool, even as a kid, kind of watching all these characters come together. And over the years, watching V again and again, it still draws you in. And so definitely Ocean of Storms, planning that out, remembering how that felt, kind of drawing in yourself into these characters' lives, and then suddenly having it crystallize and come together and form sort of your main cast. And, of course, the main character of Ocean of Storms is Alan Donovan, who is absolutely Mike Donovan, because Mike Donovan was, the coolest guy on TV when I was 10 years old.
Yep.
So, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it was a big influence.
How about for you, Bobby? Was there ever anything from V that you walked away from that had an influence on you? Maybe not even in your writing, but in anything you did.
Well, oddly enough, there was a story I wrote. I worked on these pulp adventure books, and sometimes you just get a flash of a scene, and you write a story around that.
Right.
And I was writing these stories about these pilots, and it was the Landstar Sky Ranger series, which is a very pulpy sounding title. And I had this this scene is like, we're going to go up against cattle rustlers, and one of the planes gets shot down. Anyways, the bad guys are using planes to herd the cattle and protect the guys on the ground. And I have this image in my head of a guy on a horse being chased by a biplane. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, I like this image. And it wasn't until I saw the artist draw it, because they would put like illustrations in the story, that I realized I've seen this scene somewhere before. And it's this, where Mike's being chased by the shuttlecraft. Mm-hmm. But it was somewhere in the back of my brain was just, that's a really cool image. Mm-hmm. And so subconsciously, I wrote a story around that image of a guy being chased by a plane. And, I also, I look at a lot of times how characters are written and dialogue and things like that. And sometimes I'm inspired by that, or, I'll go, this character would be like a Mike Donovan type character. And then sometimes that's the basis of where you start your characters. And so there have been times where, characters from different shows and whatnot, if I'm looking for a type, or if I'm trying to explain it and doing comics and working with someone else and I want to explain to them, I was like, okay, have you seen this movie or have you seen this show? It's kind of like this guy, and it's good. This is certainly is a good one to draw from, because there are so many character types in the show that are all really good characters that you can point to. Mm-hmm. And if you're gonna swipe from the best, right?
There you go. Now, Jeremy and I were talking about this also prior to the show. I've heard stories that Kenny said that this was meant to be a one and done miniseries. It was supposed to be, about projecting the message of, not always accepting everything on face value, and how, one can be divided and all that by certain ideologies or certain, ways of viewing things. But now, Bobby, you say you're a huge fan. Maybe you can shed some light on this. Why then did he set up some of these elements that clearly you'd sit there and want resolution to, like Robin's pregnancy?
Right. Yeah. I've heard that same story too, that it was supposed to be a one and done. And, as a kid, I thought they had planned both miniseries from the go, because you're right. There are so many. I mean, the end of the first miniseries it's the only thing missing are the words "to be continued."
Right.
Because when I got to the end of it, I'm like, okay, there has to be something else.
Right.
I think I would. Yeah, there are certain things I think I would have felt really bad if we never got resolutions to, like the baby, or just and I like the idea of seeing the visitors actually get beaten, and because the ending of the first one, I mean, we're still under their boot heel, at the end of the first movie, or the first miniseries. And I don't know what went into it. I mean, it's certainly not uncommon for something to be successful. Mm-hmm. And even though you plan to not do any more, the network that owns it goes, well, we're going to do it with you or without you. And so you then go, okay, well, I want it to be the way I want it. And you jump on board. And I remember reading in my research for this, that Kenny did have some problems with the network in the second miniseries.
Right. Yeah.
And because like these things were popular, which, was probably why it went to once you start losing that budget money, and there were the series went into its own issues as well. But it's, I don't know, it's I'm not sure.
Well, it's funny because you say that about we're still under their boot heels at the end of the miniseries. Not only that, most of the planet is still ignorant about who they are and what their intentions are, which is all the more frustrating. It's like we leave you with a planet under subjugation and being totally fooled.
Yeah. Well, if you want to compare it again to, we were making comparisons earlier about to modern day, when they ambush and rip his face off on live TV, the first thing, if you want to use the term fake news, they're immediately covering it up.
Right.
It was an elaborate ploy, so there's a lot of stuff there. The visitors learned how to spin quickly. They knew how to play us. They knew exactly what we wanted to hear. I'm sure there's probably some backstory of how long they watched us before they showed up.
Yeah.
Right, which they do mention early, brief in one or two line bit of dialogue from John. I think either when he first makes a speech to the UN or somewhere thereafter, where he says something about we'd sent scouting missions to your planet to study your culture over the years, but not much more than that. But yeah, obviously it seems to be that there was a long setup, which could always invite a prequel, I guess, somewhere down the road. But it seemed to be that they've been studying our planet for a long time. But
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
To Bobby's point earlier about and to your point as well about the setup and the groundwork Kenneth Johnson was laying for a sequel. It did seem like he had a bigger vision in mind. It was one of the big things that's never paid off, although he did do the novel that we were talking about, but it's never paid off with the series is the signal that was sent to space. And Martin mentions to Donovan, the only thing that our leader is afraid of is the enemy who's defeated him before.
Yeah.
That's obvious setting up for something big, and I think that's what Kenneth Johnson wanted to do and never got the chance to.
Right.
So I think.
Do you think we'll ever see that? I know there's always talks of either a reboot or a revisiting. Do you think we'll ever see more V?
Well,
go ahead, Jeremy.
No, sorry. I'm sorry to keep cutting off. I heard that Desilu, so this is what you were probably going to say, has announced that they're doing a V sequel series with Kenneth Johnson. Whether they just announced it like last month. So, and I only found that out in sort of prepping for this podcast today. It wasn't a big news story, but apparently, yeah. So I don't know if John, if you know more about that.
He's made the deal with them. They're going to be the main producer. The thing is, Desilu isn't what it once was, so he's still looking for funding. He's looking for backers to help develop this. The thing is, and I know this is going to sound, I don't know, to me, and I know if Kenny's involved, it'll be fine in that regard. I have a problem with it being a motion picture because there's always going to be somebody in the background going, make it bigger, make it, more exciting, instead of focusing on, what at the heart of what V is all about.
Well, a lot of times character takes a back seat to special effects when you've just got an hour and a half.
Right.
I think they should. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, no, go ahead. I'm boo.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think that in this day and age, it makes perfect sense. No sense to do it as a movie, and perfect sense to do it as a Netflix series or Amazon Prime or Hulu or, there's so many outlets where you could tell a longer form story, which I think this would need to be in a compelling format and a format that's proven to have results. So to put V on Netflix or something, do a 10-hour, miniseries makes perfect sense.
Right, because I think part of too the success of V and certainly the feel of V was because it was a miniseries. I know we don't get those as much in terms of network TV anymore.
Right.
But not only was it because you had 4 hours to tell this story, they made it an event. My parents, who are not science fiction fans, watched this with me because it was an event. This was the don't miss this miniseries event. And, we don't quite get that as much these days because we have so many viewing options. Mm-hmm. But I definitely agree with Jeremy. This would make more sense to put it on something where a 10-hour Netflix series or something like that, because then you would have more opportunity to spend time with these characters. And that was the heart of the original miniseries. And I think if you just go with an hour and a half movie, 2-hour movie, we're going to focus more on the space battles, the monsters, and that part. And a lot of the character stuff will be the first thing sacrificed because there's no room for that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's Keith DeCandido, who's part of our Chronic Rift crew here, always says, Star Trek. As much as we all love the Star Trek movies, we all have our favorites and stuff. In the end, Star Trek is really not meant to be a motion picture franchise. It's meant to be a television series where you can spend time developing the characters, telling detailed stories. You can have ongoing plot lines. I mean, Discovery proved that. I mean, with its faults and its good, it still proved that it worked better there than as a motion picture. And I think V could suffer there as well.
Yeah, because I think he's right with the Star Trek movies. Almost all of them focus on whatever the big battle is,
right.
or fighting that enemy, almost all of them deal with saving the Earth, or it's a big story. So you're missing all the things that what really made us love the original Star Trek was the relationships between those characters.
Well,
and
go ahead.
And how they all interacted. Whereas in the movies, you don't get as many of those character moments. We know they're all buds because they tell us.
Yeah,
and
right.
Then let's go to the action.
Right. Well, the last 3 Star Trek movies have all had basically at the core the same plot.
Mm-hmm.
Guy wants revenge for insert reason, builds doomsday weapon to exact that revenge. Enterprise crew intervenes to stop him, and they're all basically the same exact story, and then they color some other things in there around it, but it's kind of always been the same. And that doesn't mean that they were necessarily bad movies, except for maybe the one that they did with Khan. That was no, but they were fine and movies, and they were definitely entertaining. But that you lost. You're at the core. What makes Star Trek compelling is the interaction between the characters and the stories. So I agree 100%.
So, okay, then, if that's the case, we say 10-hour Netflix series, maybe, perhaps maybe even supplemented with novelizations, gentlemen?
Sure.
I'm down with that.
That was one thing, though. And again, I don't want to get too far away from the original miniseries, but there was a lot of merchandise that came out of the series. There were the dolls. There were the action figure. I say dolls. I got to go with Lee Majors. It's the action figures. And Jeremy, you were showing me just before the show. You've got some.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the V comic book.
Yeah.
From DC. So I found a few issues, but this one was the most, intact. Really, carrying on the story. I think this came out around the time the TV series did. But maybe had the visitors on their jetpacks. We never saw that on the show.
No.
The comics, you have a better budget.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah. I remember, and there were novelizations. I remember there were a bunch of novelizations that short. I think A.C. Crispin was the author of most.
Right.
And yeah, there was there was one in Japan. I remember that was really cool. I can't remember the title of it right now, but it was you got to find out what was happening with the resistance in Japan. It was a whole Japanese story with a whole samurai overtone and everything, and a lot of martial arts, and it was very cool. But yeah, those were everywhere. They did a bunch of those.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was.
But they never.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't remember. Did they do action figures? Because I remember the scene in the movie where Donovan comes home to the visitor toys. He has the shuttlecraft and the figures, and I was so jealous. I was like, "How do they make those? Where are they?" And I felt like if they had been out, I would have been begging my parents to take me to Toys R Us or something.
I seem to recall there being something in the way of an action figure. I'm not too many of them, but there being a line of some sort. You know?
Yeah. Maybe the big Migos or something, maybe. You know? Maybe.
I don't know.
I do remember seeing, and I'm looking it up here. You know, God bless the internet.
Right.
While we're doing things. I do see photos online of some V action figures. It doesn't look like there was a lot of them. I see like 6 or 7.
Right.
And, you know, mostly visitors. There's a lot of visitors and, you know, the generic visitor.
Right.
You know, the helmet. So you could buy lots of them if you wanted to, like, you know. And I do remember the one that was like you said, the Migo doll, where you could take the face off.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it just got like a total flashback. You're right. I do remember seeing that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, I was trying to show the screen here that I've got, but it doesn't, because I'm looking at, I've got something here, and it's got the enemy visitor Jeep, the enemy visitor shuttlecraft, and the action figure.
My goodness. How did I miss out?
But I can't seem to get the, I can't seem to get it's showing my background screen instead of the actual, on my laptop than the actual picture itself. I'll put images, though. I'll put some up on the Chronic Rift page and in the show notes so that people can see. But apparently, there was some merchandising that went on. I mean, clearly some of these other images I'm looking at look like what's the word? Custom made.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I would not be surprised with the way that they're doing it and releasing new figures based on older properties. I would not be surprised that at some point Funko Pop does not release a visitor doll or a visitor toy.
Bobby, they got to get me my $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman ones first before they do that. Yeah. I've been begging them for years.
You know, going off of that, you know, the bottom line is the V is a franchise that they really need to, I don't want to use the word exploit, but they need to take advantage of, because there is a fan base there, and I think that fan base could expand and grow, and the merchandising and everything. You know, everyone's always looking for franchises now. Right? They're digging deep into, you know, they tried with Tron, and, you know, they're always trying to sort of resurrect these old franchises and sort of bring them back to the fore. And V is right there, and that wasn't just like a fluke. Even like Battlestar Galactica was not a hit series when it came out. You know, I mean, it was well received, I think, and certainly, I mean, I loved it as a kid, but it was only when they resurrected it and Ronald Moore turned it into what it became that it really became this huge thing. But V was, you know, a big hit. You know, for 3+ years on NBC, it was, you know, right in the in the foreground there. And I feel like if they could find a way to tap into it again in the right way, not what they did with the remake, you know, years ago.
Well, but that's the thing. Do you think, though, that because it only, what was it, less than 10 years ago, do you think the remake has hurt its chances for anything anytime soon? That's why when I see Kenny's doing this, I'm like thinking, really? You know, do you think people are going to be remembering, that show from, 2009, 2010?
Yeah.
There might be. I mean, there is an audience today that wasn't around when the original V came out who may have, because it's not, you don't see it in wide release anywhere.
No.
I don't know. It's not on like Netflix or anything like that. So there's a large segment of viewers who've probably never seen the original miniseries.
Right.
Yeah. I do think what I wonder about the miniseries, the reboot series, is if people would sort of say, if V came back, most of the people who would, who would know about it would only remember the original series, and everyone else would have forgotten about this show already. You know, I think most of the average viewer has probably forgotten about this show, at all. And the only people who would remember the name would be people like ourselves who are fans of the original. So that's what I'm wondering, if it's just sort of just left the public consciousness entirely, that reboot series.
Right. Well, gentlemen, we're starting to run out of time here. Before we wrap things up, though, I want to give you a moment to sort of, get in plugs. If people want to talk to you more about V or about your own writings, how do they go about doing it? Bobby, I'll start with you.
I'm all over social media, so I'm fairly easy to find. But my main website is bobbynash.com. There's links to all my social media on there. And yeah, I would love to keep talking V. If anybody has questions or just wants to reminisce, reach out.
And Jeremy.
So I'm on social media as well, and a good place to reach me is Facebook at Ocean of Storms, the novel, which is sort of the joint page for the two books I have out now, Ocean of Storms, and then shameless plug here, Zero Limit, my newest book is out now, and that's Ocean of Storms. Facebook at Ocean of Storms, the novel. It's the best way to find me right now.
Right. And I'll put links up as well, and I'll also put up links for the interviews I did with Jeremy if you're interested in learning more about those books, because we did talk about that, and also your first novel. I'm blanking now. Coming Home. I'm blanking on the title.
Calling Off Christmas.
Say it again.
Calling Off Christmas.
Calling Off Christmas. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That one's still out there too.
Great book.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's going to do it then for this episode of the Chronic Riff. Tune in next time here on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. when I will be joined by author Julio Angel Ortiz, and we're going to be talking about Sylvester McCoy, Doctor Who number 7, and his time as the Doctor, as we continue our look at the Doctor Who series. Keep an eye out also on the feed this week. We've got new episodes of the Weekly Podioplex, the OSI Files, and presenting the transcription feature. So until next time, Bobby, Jeremy, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone, have a great week. Take care.
WNYT, Albany, New York. Knight Rider will return next week at its regularly scheduled time. Tonight, the epic the world has been waiting for. And now, prepare yourself for the final battle.